What's up, guys? Today we're going to be doing a full car full of brakes on a W body, and this is going to be a step-by-step front and rear. Okay, so we're going to be starting out with the front brakes on this Buick Regal, but this is exactly the same on a Grand Prix or a Monte Carlo, any other W body. They're pretty much exactly the same. Down here, I've got the tools that you're going to need. The way I'm going to show you how to do these, which is sort of the quick way, you're only going to need a brake caliper spreader, a 15mm with a ratchet, and a 19 to get the wheels on and off. And you will need two other things: some good brake caliper lube and some brake clean. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you would normally do is you would lift the car, put it on jack stands. I've already done that. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the brakes. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump straight to removing the caliper with the bridge. That's two 15mm bolts on the back, which is what this is for. And I loosen both of them before I remove one, to just because it makes it easier. So that's one bolt, two bolts, both of these. Then the whole caliper will come off just like this, and you can just kind of prop it up here for a second. Now we are going to do pads and rotors. So the next thing I'm going to do is get the new rotor. And the rotors that we're going with are these Duralast Golds that we got from AutoZone. A couple reasons why. One, these are their beefiest, nicest rotors as far as how they're made. But also, they come anodized black. Don't worry, that will scrub off of the surface where the pad's going to ride. But it will leave you a nice anodized surface that will not rust. So it will make everything look better going forward. Let me just get this out of the way. We're just going to slip this rotor off. Do not drop the caliper. Then you're just going to take the other rotor and slip it right back on. Now, because we're going to do pads 2 and I need some time and room to work with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a lug nut and thread it back on here and just run it snug enough to hold the rotor flat to the hub. That way it's not moving around on me. Then you're just gonna, I'll show you, this is the difference in how I do this versus the way some people do this, but I learned this from being a tech and being on a time schedule. We're going to pop the pads in and pull them out, then grab the whole bridge and slide it off the end of the slide pins, just like that. Now the rubber bushings stayed in there, that's fine, we can get that out later. But that will leave you with these here. Now you do want to double check that these are tightened correctly and are still tight. I know these are because I did them last time. So we're good there. So I'm not even going to mess with these bolts. I'm only going to do a couple things here. One, I'm going to take brake clean and I'm going to clean off the caliper bridge, but I'm not going to spray into these slider pin holes. Then I'm going to take the caliper itself and do the same thing. I'm just going to spray it off and clean it good before I put it back. Now brake clean dries really fast, so it's not going to take much for that to air dry, but you can take, you know, shop towel, paper towel, whatever you want, and just kind of go over it to get the loose stuff. And then that, you can see this is already almost completely dry. We just want to wipe this section out. Then you're going to take your brake caliper grease right here and lube the area where the pads are sliding back and forth. You don't want a huge amount of grease, just enough to do the job, because you don't want it slinging that around. Then you're going to lube the slider pins themselves like that. We need to push this caliper piston back in. So what I'm going to do to push that back in is I'm going to take one of the old pads, stick it right here, take this caliper spreader in the spread direction and set it between that and the caliper. Then we're just going to turn like this and it will push that piston back in. Then once you've got that all the way in like that, now we're going to go back to where we were a minute ago and put these back on using the same technique as before. Just pinch the air out from under the boots on both sides. Then you're going to need your new pads. The way these pads should come is like this. You're going to have one that has the little squeal indicator on it and one that doesn't. I always take the one with the squeal indicator and put it towards the inside, right up against the piston like this. Make sure that bridge is pushed all the way back. Then your other one, you can just slide right in like that. Make sure they're pulled apart good. And that's pretty much it. Then you're just going to take one of these bolts. Make sure that if you turned the caliper this way, turn it back this way. Don't roll it all the way over. And then you're just going to stick it back around the rotor like that. Hold it in the right position and start your bolts. The first one is a little bit harder to get started than the second one is. Then just grab your ratchet and snug them down. Then you have a couple options here. Some people just give it a quick extra little jerk to make sure they're good and tight. Some people torque them to spec. I will put the spec on the screen so that you have that in case you want to torque it to spec. Then you're going to put the wheel back, and the wheel you're going to go in this order and torque to 100 foot-pounds. But that is it. That's it for the front, and then we're going to move to the back. So now we're on to just the back. As usual, you start by jacking it up, putting a jack stand under it. I'm leaving the jack under it too. Never hurts to have anything extra. But we're going to do this a little bit different, and there's a couple extra steps I want to go over. First, you're going to need a 14 millimeter because we're going to actually take the slide pins out first. And you're going to do this for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is making sure that they will come out. Because these have a tendency to get stuck sometimes. Both of those came out nice and clean. Well, that one's a little bit stuck, but not bad. So just put those out of the way. Pull the caliper itself up, sit it up here out of the way. Pull your pads off, just like this. Then you're going to need to switch to a 13 millimeter for the bridge to knuckle bolts. So you're just going to pop both of those out. If they're not over torqued, these should come out pretty easy. They'll be tight, but they shouldn't be super overly tight. But you do get these a lot of times that are over torqued, and they can be really hard to remove. Kind of like these were. With those two bolts out, take your bridge, put it out of the way for right now. Now here, when you go to remove the rotor, it's going to expose the parking brake assembly. This is a great time to make sure this is tightened enough. The adjustment is right down here. If it's loose, if your parking brake hasn't been working or hasn't been holding very well, go ahead and tighten that up just a little bit. Mine is already tight, already doing good, so I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm going to take the rotor, and now we got traditional rotors this time, not the golds because they didn't have them. So there is an extra step we need to do here. And that is we need to clean them off with some brake clean. And we'll need to wipe them off with a rag because these, to keep them from rusting, are shipped in packing oil, and we don't want to have to burn through that. So here you see the nice new shiny new rotor. Here's the old one, and you can tell it had quite a bit of rust and was not making good contact back here, which I'm sure was making the braking performance not what we want it to be. So the next thing we're going to do is take the caliper bridge and clean it off with some brake clean. Like I said, this stuff dries really well, so you really don't have to do much more than just kind of wipe it off a little bit. Then you're just going to take your caliper lube and lubricate the area that the pad sits on only, and try not to get it all over everything else. Just like that. Then we're going to go ahead and bolt this back on first. And it is entirely possible to do the fronts in this same order, but I have just as much luck doing it the other way, and it's a little faster in the front, so that's why I do it that way. And once again, I'll put the spec for that on there on the screen. Then same thing here, where you're going to have a little indicator there. That pad goes on the back, and the one that does not have the indicator goes on the front. These are Duralast gold pads we're using, by the way. Just a kind of pad I've used a lot that I don't mind. Now these smaller calipers, you cannot fit this tool in there with, it's too wide. So what I do is just a big pair of pliers and just squeeze it together like that. Still super easy. Then make sure you flip it back the same way you unflipped it. Take these calipers, slide them back on here, just let it sit for a minute. You're going to take your guide pins, and if they're clean and they look okay, just go ahead and lubricate them up and put them back in. If they don't want to come out and they're seized, or if they've got rust on them or something, then you're going to want to get a wire brush and clean them off good, get any rust that's on there off. Any of that will make the caliper get stuck in position and not function correctly. So then once you've got both of those slider pins in and started, we're just going to switch back to the 14 millimeter and run them back in. And there you go. Everything is ready. Next, I'll show you what to do on the test drive. Okay, so we've done brakes on all four corners now. I showed you how to do the front, showed you how to do the back. So it looks like you'd be done right now, right? But you're not. A couple more steps just to get everything ready to go. First of all, the first time you hit the brake pedal is going to go pretty much to the floor. So when you first get in, before you crank the car, hit the brakes, push them as far as they'll go, about 5 or 6 times, until you've got a decent firm pedal and you can push and it'll push back against you. Then we're just going to take this for a test drive, and I'm going to show you how I seat in brakes. So once you get it out on the road, you've already pumped up the brakes. You're going to do a series of stops to bed the brakes in. So what you're going to do is you're going to get up, say 30-40 miles an hour. You're going to give it a light stop till almost stopped. Then you're going to let it ride for a little while. Say, I don't know an exact time, just a couple minutes to let it cool down, whatever. Then you're going to do the same thing again. Then you're going to take it up to a higher speed. You're going to get it up around 55, 60 miles an hour. Depending on your roads, you may or may not be able to get to one or the other. But once you get up to that speed, you're going to give it a good firm stop, not slamming on the brakes, but a good hard stop, and hold it down to about, say, 20 miles an hour. Then roll, give it a couple more minutes, to let it cool down again, get it back up to speed. And once you get to where you can, obviously if you're in traffic, that's going to dictate how much you can do this. Then you're going to give it another good firm stop. By this point, if everything is good and you clean the rotors off well, they should be starting to bed in, and you should feel them feeling pretty normal, at which case just drive around a little bit and make sure that they feel good. And if that's good, just be nice to them for a few days to let them finish bedding in, and you are done. So that was the basics on how to do brakes on a Buick Regal. If this video helped you at all, drop me a like, drop me a comment, let me know what you thought. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and peace.